Hello and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast Best Ball Edition. We have a guest host with us today. Hamza, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be back.
Good to have you on. Good to have another face to help us break down these best ball drafts. So you see Gibbs, Bijan, Chase, and Puka go in the first four. That is going to be very stock. And we have the 12th pick. Matt, how do you feel about us having 12 in this draft? Again, we get a late pick.
I'm pretty upset about it because I feel like the majority we've had these late picks and it's just a slew of running backs. But hopefully Jefferson will make it to us, maybe Amon-Ra. But at this point, I think we're going to be looking at that trio of Genty, Achane, Hampton, maybe Saquon. But let's see what happens here.
All right, so Amon-Ra goes. So that's unfortunate, obviously, if CD or Jefferson is there. So Hamza, between these running backs, what's your feeling between Genty and Cook and Achane, Barkley, Walker?
I'm really in on Ken Walker this season, given where Kansas City's at. They're going to be running the ball to start the season, probably with Mahomes. Like him a lot, and that's probably who I'd take here.
All right, we'll give you the Walker pick. This is going to be the Hamza draft. So who are you going with next year?
Especially early.
Early, I mean, so another one here.
You got 6 seconds, by the way. Who are you going? We'll break it down.
I guess we'll go.
All right, Achane. So I love the Achane pick, but go ahead, break down that one for a second between him and James Cook, who we said we didn't think was going to make it to us, but then we end up passing on here.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the way that Dolphins are going to run their offense this year, there's not a lot to go to outside of Achane. I mean, Malik Willis is going to be there. But really, at the end of the day, Achane's going to be that center point.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no other playmakers at this point, right? It's just he and Tolbert and Malik Washington. So I get it, man, but I don't know. We'll see what they end up doing in the draft. Hopefully they invest in the offensive line and give him a little bit more support. But you can't argue with the fact that he's probably going to get 100 targets this year, maybe pushing that. So and we know he's explosive. And I think with the Walker pick too, definitely a little rich for my blood, but I see the vision, right? And we saw what he did in the postseason, given the opportunity there. So right now with Pacheco being gone and, Kareem Hunt being unsigned, I think he's going to have some good runway over there. And, we know that offense is going to score a lot of points, when Mahomes is back. Hopefully that is week 1. But, this is a little bit more of a unique build because I don't think we've taken Walker at all in any of these yet, have we?
No, we haven't taken him at all. And I don't even think we really took him when he was going way later, maybe once or twice, but definitely not since he's signed with Kansas City. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. It's interesting, Hamza, to hear that you are in on Walker. I have concerns about Kansas City's offensive line just in general. So if they do beef it up, maybe we do see something a little bit better there. Mahomes, like you said, coming off injury, I don't think he's going to be looking to run as much. So maybe there's going to be a little bit of the restored value of the Kansas City running back, but that just was not there last year at all. And so, Walker's obviously a different animal. We saw what he could do with all the work in the playoffs. So, it'll be good to have some exposure to him at this point. And Achane, I mean, I obviously love Achane. I definitely think he belongs cemented in the top 5 running backs. And so for me, that's, I get James Cook is really good. And I feel like I've been touting James Cook for a while now, like years on at this point. But with Achane, I do think that Miami addresses the wide receiver position in the first round this year. They do have multiple first round picks. So I do anticipate that they're going to take a receiver, and that's going to be somebody that they try to feature, especially if they can take one of them at 10 or 11. I forget exactly where their pick is right there in the early double digits. So, if they end up with one of the top 3 guys there, I think that could really help their passing game offense.
A lot of good players here. I know that Ibuka has been climbing up a bit. We've been taking him a decent amount, but Hamza, kind of looking at the board here, any thoughts?
Where I was going with those running backs, really both those guys can maybe hit a big one. And so in best ball, you kind of just want a big guy to come through. The name here, though, that sticks out to me now that we've got those 2 running backs is maybe Ibuka here. Okay. And I think given where Tampa Bay is at, I like that pick. Now that Evans is gone, we'll see how Godwin comes back. I'm curious what you guys have taken here now that we're at the turn. Given this,
Well, you got
build
9
too.
seconds to make the next one.
All right,
Take Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith, we'll take that. I mean, we'll hammer wide receiver.
Yeah. And Ibuka is somebody that we take a lot here too, so I'm on board with that as well. I do think that the first half, Matt says it all the time, if his first half and second half were swapped, he would be going at the 1-2 turn. But because we saw that fall off in the second half once everybody got healthy, we're seeing him go way later. Now, I'm not a Devontae Smith guy normally, but I feel like the trade rumors around AJ Brown have heated up so much at this point in the offseason that if he does get moved, Devontae Smith has proven that when AJ Brown's off the field, that he can just be a monster. And that's even if Goddard's off the field at sometimes too, but especially when AJ Brown is off the field. So if he does step into that number one role, I think he's more than capable of taking that on. And so I think I'm going to be more and more inclined to start taking Devontae Smith at this price until that trade does come through.
And I think that's good too, because we've done so many of these drafts at the 12 spot that, gives us a chance to take Smith here, like I said in the first round, taking Walker, a little bit of a different blend. So yeah, we'll see how this turns out. But again, we've said this over and over again, where it's just like when you don't have those first 4 picks, I don't know, just looking at that team with Chase, Henry, Jacobs, Javonte, like if they can fill out their wide receiver room even halfway decently, we're so far behind the 8 ball from that team 3.
Yeah, going Chase, Henry, Jacobs, Williams is kind of stacked.
On the other side of the coin, I don't know that I like team 4 that much. Obviously, we take Kyron a lot in these drafts, but we usually get him at the end of the 3rd or the beginning of the 4th. Mm-hmm. And, Rashee Rice is just somebody that I struggle with so much because I feel like he just is such a wild card in terms of staying on the field. I do like team 1 a lot though, right? You get the stud running back and then you just fill out 4 straight wide receivers that I'll really like at this point. So I think I prefer that build, honestly, of the first 3 teams.
So looking back at the board, we've got a nice mix of 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, no quarterbacks yet. I think, if Lamar does free fall, that would be an interesting one. Otherwise, at this range, Monty's someone that we've taken a decent amount. Swift, we've taken a few times. BTJ is definitely your guy.
I like BTJ there too. I'm curious, where do you guys normally take quarterbacks here?
Well, it's a little bit of a tricky situation because the first few we waited on quarterbacks and just ended up hating our room. But the last couple, we've kind of been in that range with, the Dak Goff type tier. But hold that thought. We're a few seconds away. Carnell Tate, I'm not taking him here. Lemon, not taking him here. Marv, Daniels is an interesting one because we
got
don't
2 seconds. Yeah, go Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, because we don't really need a stack with him necessarily because of his rushing. So I like him here. I have him as my QB3 at this point, and that's exactly where we got him.
And that's exactly where my question was going. I think I like Daniels there. Assuming he stays healthy and he can stay on the field, he should be in line for a good season.
Yeah, I maybe am a little burned by Daniels, so I probably would have gone Lemon there just to try and take a shot. Like maybe that's where or maybe he's the one that lands with the Dolphins, and I think that would be an awesome situation. Maybe he doesn't make it that far into the draft. I don't know, but I think Daniels is obviously super high upside if he can stay on the field. But overall, I think the quarterbacks that we've been getting to, we've been trying to stack quarterbacks. So like seeing that, Hurts or even Lawrence, like we said, maybe in the next round is somebody that we could have targeted, that takes them off our board. But we'll see how it turns out. We haven't really taken Daniels in any of these drafts yet either. So it does feel like he fell quite a bit further here into the 6th round.
Dart goes. Surprising.
No, that's too rich for Trevor's blood. Dart right there.
I just
top 10.
I'm just never going to get there this year. And I get it. I should be way more enthusiastic, especially if they add a receiver. I should be more into it. But I just think there's way more injury risk than I'm comfortable with a quarterback that high. And on top of that, I'm just not sure how great of a passer he is. I understand the rushing, but I don't know. I should be more on board, and I just am not at this point. I definitely think that I'd be taking any and all of the 5 quarterbacks going behind him, no problem, like no questions asked. So I'm going to end up with no Jackson Dart this year.
You mean even if they get a wide receiver like Malik Neighbors?
Well, he's obviously the one that's established in there, but if they do go in on another guy early,
together, yeah. No, yeah, I love Dart, but I wouldn't take him over Caleb or May or I've never been super in on Hurts, but I think, the fact that, we play mostly super flex, like I think that's kind of baked into a lot of our, risk appetite with these quarterbacks. But yeah, I at that cost, I'm not really going to be getting him either. But let's take a look again. So you did
That was
mention,
QB5, by the way, just to
yeah.
just to show how out of control the hype is. QB5 there in this draft.
And so here's our stacking partner with Lawrence that you talked about earlier with BTJ, but I don't think that's going to be the move here. If this was a CD draft, would be all over Dak, but someone who we haven't taken, who I know you have always really liked, is Jalen Warren. If he's here and Rodgers is going to throw him a million dump offs, I'm not hating that value. Looking at the wide receiver position, Addison can be very streaky. Pearsall obviously is talented, but can't stay healthy. Buddy system with Myers. I think this is too rich for Fannin, just based on where we've been getting Laporta, who I'm probably just going to continue to have over the whole offseason. Or maybe there's that chance that Cortland Sutton just makes his way back to us like he seems to do every draft. So, Trevor, I'll lean on you in this one. I think Sutton's probably
Sutton's
your
the
pick
easy
here.
one there. Yeah, Sutton's the easy one. And then if we want to go in on running back, let's take a look at just the running back position too, because I think we need to get another one now. And it's funny because you were mentioning Jalen Warren, but knowing that Rico Dowdle signed there and that, go ahead and take Dowdle. And knowing that Gainwell moved on, I do think it's going to be an interesting dynamic in that I think Warren might switch back to his old role into that Gainwell position, right? And that now the Najee Harris role, for lack of a better way to say it, is going to be with Dowdle. So I don't expect Warren to be getting a ton of carries like I did going into last year, as they were saying he was the one, and Caleb Johnson's still there. So I wonder if he works his way into the equation in year two. So I think right now of those three that I actually prefer Dowdle over Warren, just because I think he's going to be the one that gets more action between the tackles and on the ground. And as long as he stays involved at least somewhat in the passing game, which Najee always did and Warren did last year as well, I could see him being a factor on the goal line and actually kind of working his way into that 15 touch range.
He's going to be a factor in the passing game. I mean, it's Rodgers back there, assuming nothing changes from that regard. So, and we know he can catch passes. So this just makes me happy because before he had signed, I was taking Dowdle literally in every other draft. And since he's moved up a couple rounds, and you were kind of clowning on me in the beginning, which is fine because he didn't have a team. So I'm happy with all those shares. And I think that makes sense as far as this build goes. So we've got 3 running backs, obviously 2 up top that we feel very confident in. But if Dowdle is getting those 15 touches, I think that's a good spot. Obviously, Daniels, we've got that high upside quarterback. And then the wide receiver room is very solid. You've got the consistency of Ibuka. Smith, if A.J. Brown does move on, is going to be an absolute steal. BTJ's obviously a wild card. And then, Sutton, even with the addition of Waddle, his ADP is, still probably a little bit too low.
One thing that scares me about Dowdle there is just those targets. A lot of what I've been seeing is that Pittsburgh is anticipated to take receiver in the draft, especially in their first round pick. I've seen a lot of like Denzel Boston. I've seen a lot of Concepcion. You even have Cooper Jr. in that range. And so you could easily see them bring someone else on and kind of see more dilution of that target share that you might want to see going to Dowdle.
I mean, maybe, but with the addition of Pittman, I feel like they just have other things to worry about. But
it is Rodgers. So
with McCarthy specifically, I understand he wants to spread it out a lot. So
I think it's far more likely that whoever they draft drops the ball in their first pass on their way into the end zone and they get benched for 8 weeks. And then, then they're good towards the second half of the year, maybe. I think Rodgers has proven over a long period of time that he likes to target his running backs. I'm not worried about Dowdle getting a huge target share. So that's why I think he's still in the 8th round. I think it's totally fine to be looking for him when you need a running back. Now, I also want to defend myself a little bit because you said I was clowning you, Matt, about taking Dowdle so much because you were wish casting him to the Chiefs. You were wish casting your 12th round pick to be, you know, a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick. So
That's true.
you know, Pittsburgh was a good compromise. At least he's going to play a lot more than if he signed as a backup. So it did work out better than I was envisioning. So I'll give you that.
All right, we are almost back on the clock here, so I will throw it. Actually, I will take these 2 picks. I think I'm going to go with Wandale. I'm going to go with Wandale first and foremost because we know that he's going to earn a bunch of targets. He was just paid a decent amount of money, and hopefully Cam Ward can take a step forward. And then I don't necessarily love the options after the Baker and Chuck. And I think taking Baker gives us the opportunity to stack with Ibuka and then maybe take a 3rd Tampa Bay guy late, like a Tez at the end of the round. Also allows us to take like a Cade Otton super cheap late. The other one I was looking at and considering here was Jaden Reed, just because we know when he gets the touches and the opportunities, he is a very good player, but it's just so hard to look past the fact that he's going to be like a 50% snap share. No matter what we say, that's not going to change.
Yeah, I agree on Reed for sure. He is much more of an explosive player, not a volume player. The guy I think I would have looked at there just mainly, I guess, because I spent so much time talking about him with Dowdle was Gainwell. I think he's going to have a solid role with Baker, another guy that loves to target the running back. And I don't think they went and signed him just to not play in the same role that he just thrived in. So I do think that there's some value there in the passing game in Tampa Bay with Gainwell out of the backfield. And, you know, Bucky, I don't know exactly what his role is going to be. I mean, I feel like he was kind of inconsistent when he came back last year, and I think there's plenty of space for him, for Gainwell to be the pass catcher there.
Yeah, I mean, the Bucky one's tough, right? Because he is a good pass catcher, he is a good runner, but if Gainwell's going to bite into that at the same rate as Rachaad White did, or even more so, and then you've got, the 3rd running back who gets a ton of the goal line carries too. So, if Bucky's just getting a lot of runway in between the 20s, he's probably going to be a disappointment this season. Now, who knows? Last year everything kind of fell apart with that team, and Bucky was dealing with injuries, and maybe he gets that efficiency back from year 1. But I'm starting to fade him a little bit. I would say compared to where I had him, before that acquisition.
Interesting to see where Tampa Bay goes overall this season. I mean, it'll be as Baker goes, I think.
I mean, he's a free agent after this year too, right?
He is, yeah.
I hope he's good. It's more fun when he's good, but I don't know. You could also flip that argument on its head and say the outlier has been the last few years, considering how his career started. So I'm betting on Baker just at QB 19. Like, to me, that's just too good because, we saw 2 years ago and the year prior to that what he can be. But I hope you're right.
Let's maybe not say how it started. Maybe let's say like how it was going, because he did set the rookie record for touchdowns. So, he was, and he did take the abysmal Browns to the playoffs and actually beat the Steelers in the playoffs. So, he was having a nice.
Well, everyone beats
the Browns.
Everyone beats the Steelers in the playoffs.
Well, maybe not the Browns though, but yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah, no, but Baker, I think, will bounce back. It was the first year without Liam Cohen. I think there was going to be an adjustment no matter what we expected, and he was coming off one of his best seasons of his career. So I think that there's plenty of room for bounce back here. I don't think the personnel is going to be switching on him as much as it was all year long. And the fact that Ibuka kind of just got left out of the game plan, I think, was also just weird down the stretch. But anyways, we need a tight end. I think Jake Ferguson or Dallas Goedert is the way to go here. We didn't end up with Dak. So, I wouldn't mind going in a different direction, but I think he's the best tight end there.
I've got one guy I want to talk about, but maybe we should make our pick first.
Well, if that's the guy that you want to pick, let's pick him.
He was going to be a tight end, so I don't know if we want to take another tight end.
5 seconds. 5 seconds. 2 seconds.
Take someone. And we...
No, it's a Kincaid.
I wanted to give you the opportunity there, Hamza. So who was the guy that you wanted to take?
So the guy I would have taken there is kind of a dart throw, and I think I've been just reading a lot about him and really kind of super stoked to see where he goes. I really hope he lands with someone good, is Kenyon Sadiq. I mean, just how he tested and everything that he's put on tape thus far, I think would have been worth the dart throw. I think a lot of what I've seen is it really just depends on who comes up and takes him. I think it'd be really good to see someone like the Ravens take him, to be honest. I mean, you've got an aging tight end room there. They don't really have anyone behind Andrews, and so someone there could be good. I think a lot of what I've seen is he's going to the Jets potentially, depending on how they kind of shake out their draft and what sort of identity they look for, knowing that they have, is it 5 first rounders in the next between the next 2 drafts, but knowing the skill set Sadiq has and kind of what he could be, um, it's kind of who I would have looked at, knowing that I see the argument for Ferguson is just sometimes that gap after the first couple tight ends is makes it worth more so taking that dart throw.
Yeah, and honestly, that's who I thought that you wanted to pick. And a couple thoughts there. I think with Kincaid, like this was the first time I've taken Kincaid, and I'm honestly out on Kincaid because like he's never on the field. The coaches are already saying that he's not going to be on the field a ton. And what do we? What happens when we watch any Bills game? It's like, oh, tight ends just scored. Oh no, wait, that's Dawson Knox. Sorry, like that's Dawson Knox like every time.
5 times a year,
But-
dude. It's so annoying.
Yeah, but you know, we'll see. Obviously, Kincaid's a first round talent too, and I think with Sadiq, I share a lot of similar sentiment, and you know, maybe you know the Dolphins who need a playmaker, like if he goes to that team, can back his way into a ton of targets. My issue with Sadiq, and maybe I'm being hypercritical, is like I don't know. I feel like I watched every Oregon game, and you'll watch the Oregon game, and he'll make like one play, and you're like, oh, dude, this guy's awesome. And then you look, and it's like, I don't know how. Like, why is he only getting like 4 targets, like 5 targets a game? Like, there's something to be said about that. Maybe it's just because they've got other playmakers, like you got Decorian Moore running around the field and a bunch of studs, but he just never was like as much of the focal point as that I would have wanted to see from like the hype that he was getting. And it seems like some of that hype has cooled down. Like early in the draft process it was like, oh, he's going to go top 12. And now it's, I don't know. I haven't been following as much as you have maybe, but obviously he's extremely talented in the right scenario or situation. He could thrive, but on the flip side, a lot of rookie tight ends, you know, if they struggle to get on the field or don't block, it could be, you know, a pick down the toilet, a la how Kincaid's probably going to be this year for us.
Yeah, I think the timer got the best of us there. So,
and we could have just had Juwan Johnson around later, who is going to go off week 17 per usual.
Yeah,
It's just
he's
going
to be the
awesome.
league winner. Yeah.
as always,
Yeah, no, on Sadiq, I will just make the comparison that the analysis that Matt is throwing out this year about Sadiq is eerily similar to the analysis that he threw out all offseason about Matthew Golden. So I could not be more spooked to pick Sadiq because of that, because Matthew Golden had these same like production issues, would flash, but it's like, where are the numbers?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, he's going to be a first round pick. And since he's never produced in his life, it's going to take him a second in the NFL. So Sadiq is somebody that I'm going to have to see a lot more of to get comfortable drafting him. All right, we're up in a pick.
So my mind's on Connor here just because there's a chance that he's the 1A in this offense and we know what he can be when he's on the field. Obviously, he can't stay healthy. But I think if he can at least get us off to a hot start, plus we've got 2 other studs. So I think I'm going to go here. And then I'll throw it to one of you guys for the next one. You know, we can go in a few different directions. I think we're pretty good at quarterback unless you want to grab like Mendoza or maybe a Geno late, but I think maybe we should prioritize wide receiver or running back. So we got 10 seconds. Somebody shout out a name.
Emmanuel Wilson.
Okay.
interesting.
Get us off to a hot start.
Get us off to a hot start, but I think too that he showed when Jacobs was out that he was very good in the lead role, right? He didn't have any problems taking over. And so if there's a situation here where they're going to go back to a 50-50 split once Charbonnet is healthy, if he gets Ken Walker's role in round 14, that's going to be super valuable. Even if he only scores 4 or 5 touchdowns, I just think that he has pass catching chops. I think he is a pretty good overall running back for how they just kind of let him walk. And so he's somebody that I'm getting much more excited to draft now that Walker's out of the situation. He's signed, and Charbonnet was still a question mark health wise.
Yeah, and there's no reason to believe that Seattle's going to use Sharp, assuming once he's like back and fully ramped up to speed, that they're going to use him more than they used Ken Walker last year. Because like Ken Walker is better than Zach Charbonnet, and it was still this even split, an annoying split. So, if it is close to 50-50, and that reminds me, one of those games, I don't know if it was in the fantasy playoffs, but it was like Jacobs was like questionable, then he played, and he was horrible. And I was just hoping Jacobs wouldn't play because I had Wilson on my bench. And I was like, I just want to start Wilson because if it's just Wilson's time to shine, he's going to produce. But anyways, I actually...
Yeah, and Jacobs had like 10 carries for 10 yards that game.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, why did you even go out there? You were a game time decision. You were borderline doubtful all week. And we basically thought you weren't playing all the way until Saturday night. And so, no, I totally get that. And Wilson would have been totally serviceable and played much better than Jacobs ended up playing in that game.
All right, so we have 6 picks left. So we're obviously going to need more wide receivers. Tight end, it kind of just depends. I could see taking his chance on, Hawk, I think could be a good value. You've kind of talked me into that. Schultz is just perennially undervalued. So if one of those guys is there, we can go with the trio. But we definitely need some more bodies at the wide receiver position.
I think I'm out on Ridley this year.
Yeah, I think
would call that out.
How could that be?
Feeling
what
a
happened
little burned.
last year? I missed it.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about like a flat? Depends on who lands where.
Well,
I think it gets to us, but if we threw like a dart at, Tesla, he had some flashes at the end of last year ish. But I was more so thinking
everybody loves Tesla, dude. What the heck is going on with that guy?
He's never going to draft Tesla.
Has a 45% touchdown rate, and everybody's like, "Ooh, he's good."
But I guess I was looking more so at Christian Kirk as just kind of a possession type receiver.
I can get behind that.
They're going to need to throw the ball. Kittle's hurt. Pearsall's iffy all the time, and so maybe as one of our picks at the turn, throwing one at Kirk.
Okay, I'm good with that for sure.
Is it time for Devon Vele?
Is that someone you guys have been taking?
70 picks over slot.
I think we can still wait and get Vele at the next one. So
the one guy I have been seeing that I thought he really kind of started coming into his own. It'll depend on how the draft goes, but Chimere Dike from Tennessee. He's the wide receiver in Tennessee that I'd be kind of
Thank you. Do we finally get to take him?
Yeah, because we have a guest on the show,
and we have Wandale already. Thank you.
Usually, I'm pulling.
Finally, get a share of DK.
Usually, I'm pulling the trigger and not letting Trevor always have his way. But since we have such a kind guest,
every single time I mention DK, Matt's like, "All right, well, I'm going to take Trey Tucker here."
Okay, I've never
just
taken
moves
Trey
on.
Tucker.
No,
I never take Trey Tucker.
Just goes in a different direction. Just let's take Nicholas Singleton instead. Actually, he might be good.
So. Yeah, he's going to be way better. No, I like DK as a talent. I just don't know what his role is going to be with Wandale there now. So I guess your guys' hope is that he just scores on every punt return. So that should be a good strategy for us.
Oh, the hope is that he gets kicked outside and becomes more of a X or a Z wide receiver instead of in the slot. He can be too, is the thing. He's got speed. You can see it on his punt returns and when he plays. I know he played a ton in the slot last year, but I think if they kick him outside, that he can still be successful out there. And, hopefully that's the case anyways, and we all like Cam Ward as a talent in terms of NFL quarterback, although he was terrible for fantasy last year. But if he takes another step forward, these guys can both be productive.
Fully agree with that.
And I can't
Tennessee is going to turn into
taking Trey Tucker. I've never taken Trey Tucker.
Honestly, I just looked at the board and it was the first name I saw. So.
Literally never taken Trey Tucker.
I think Tennessee is going to be one of these teams this year where, I feel like we always try and pick out a couple teams that are expected to be bottom 5, bottom 10 offenses, end up being middle of the pack, and all of their players are way better for fantasy than we're expecting. I feel like Tennessee might be one of those teams this year where all of their players are going to get buried in the rankings. You're going to be able to get them in round 12 or later, outside of maybe Pollard, but even him, you can get him around 8. And then everybody's going to exceed. Nobody's going to like completely go off necessarily, but everybody's going to exceed their ADP in that offense. So, I think Tennessee could be one of those couple teams we see every year do it.
Yeah, I think honestly in Superflex, I'm going to be in on Ward as like a third quarterback in like our 10-team leagues and stuff like that, because I think with the addition of Dable and what Dart did, and Wandale is going to be a really reliable presence in that offense. He's definitely someone that I'm going to be circling, obviously in Superflex formats. So kicking back around, we've got 4 picks left. I'm kind of in the camp that if Otten is there, we can take him just to have that third mid-range tight end, just because Kincaid never plays. But we'll see if he gets there. And then looking at the running backs, Kamara I know would be probably Trevor's pick here, which I'm okay with, honestly. I think if he does play, like he's gonna get his touches, versus like Vidal's the RB3 most likely. But Braylon Allen's is another interesting one, because if Breece Hall does get traded, but would be more surprised if Hall does get traded at this point, just because there is a path toward their future with all those draft picks. But what do you guys think here? Or Mason Taylor, he could be a nice sneaky addition or a sneaky play this year, unless Sadiq does go there.
I'm in on Kamara this year. I mean, not a lot is, I think, going to change in New Orleans, I would say, for the most part. I think they're going to run it back with Chuck, right? Kamara's going to get his. We will expect them to probably bring someone in.
They signed Travis Etienne.
Yeah, but I mean, even with that, I think Kamara is going to get his.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be a solid backup and can still be involved in the passing game. So hopefully another season with Shuck being relatively stable, Kamara can still have a role. Now, I do think that they gave Etienne a lot of money, and I know they have Kamara signed for quite a bit of money too, so they're spending a lot in that backfield. But I do expect Kamara to assume more of a backup role than any sort of role that we've seen from him in the past.
All right, and I took the liberty to take Otten just to get that stack. Now we've got 2 picks left. We should probably go 1 wide receiver and 1 running back here. This is kind of the part of the board where things get a little bit chaotic, but I know if I was to ask Hamza, his pick would probably be Kyle Williams, because I think that's your favorite player, if I'm not mistaken.
Because I have him in one of our dynasty leagues doesn't mean
okay. Well, let me ask you this: if I was to offer you a trade
favorite value,
Kyle Williams in dynasty, what would be your asking price?
It honestly wouldn't be that much right now.
Like next year's 4th.
I think a next year, like 3rd right now is what I was thinking. Depending on where you end up, I could, like, if you end up last, if it's an early 4th, maybe that's enough.
Fair enough.
Devon Vele.
Dang it, we got too cute with Vele. We're not going to get him.
You don't think so? He's too high up now?
We're like 50% exposure on Vele, and I've done like 50 drafts.
Oh, maybe we don't do that.
It makes no sense that he's so low and he's going to be the number 2 on the Saints. They used their 4th round pick in this draft to trade for him. They're not going to bring in anybody else in the draft. So I just think that he's a major sleeper in terms of role, because like you look at all these guys and there's nobody else is going to be the number 2 pass catcher or number 2 in their wide receiver room outside of maybe Tolbert, but I think we all expect them to address that position in some way. But with the Saints, they got Olave and I think they got Vele, and that's what they're going to be rolling with going into the year. That's my expectation anyways.
We already got Dowdle. So we should get another running back too. You think Najee's going to go anywhere? He's just going to hang out?
He's going to try and sign, and he's going to run a 5-1, and nobody's going to pick him up.
So it's going to be like the Kareem Hunt thing, where like halfway into the year, he's scoring like a touchdown on every game.
Oh my God. He goes to Kansas City and ruins Ken Walker's value.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Gets all the goal line carries.
I wouldn't even be surprised at this point. Your guy Jaden Blue is there, Trev. If you want to go in that
Yeah,
direction,
I don't mind ever
Claiborne.
taking him. I feel like if something happens to Williams, that he's going to be the guy. They gave him a game last year. I understand that, you know, maybe there's a maturity thing there with him, but he is as explosive a runner as there is in the league. So it's, you know, he can hit a home run on any play. He's super fast. And so, you know, I like that type of player.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of this guy, Brashard Smith, who you loved last year too.
Still a Brashard Smith truther. I got him in both dynasty leagues. Will
Nice.
not quit.
Just he
He's
and
going to be
Trey
a pass
Benson
catcher.
holding on
Yeah.
for dear life when you're in
They get eliminated from the playoffs and they still don't play him. It's like, dude, cut bait on these two old farts that you have back here. Try to run the ball, dude. Let Brashard Smith do something. They
I
still
know.
didn't let him. So I don't know.
I know.
Brashard Smith probably is going to be a cut this year, but you know, maybe he'll survive on taxi for at least a little longer.
How do you feel about Jalen Noel this year too? I'm like, it's just so. I don't know. There's no Kirk, but if they get Tank Dell back, it's like. I mean, he's not someone that's going to be drafted in redraft. I'm just hopeful he'll get a chance to play a little bit more, but I don't know.
I mean, if I had any faith in CJ Stroud, maybe I would be more interested in him. I'm struggling to draft Nico Collins because I don't trust Stroud. So, you know, when you get down here, I guess it's a fine dart throw. But like you said, he might be fourth on the depth chart sooner than later. So, you know, I very much more like taking a shot on Tez Johnson, who's going to be fourth on his depth chart. At least we saw something from him last year, you know, and we were hoping that Jalen Noel was going to have a sizable role and just never was really able to get it going. So I don't know. I don't, as much as I liked Noel coming in and he was a third round pick, I just think the situation couldn't be worse right now for him.
I agree. All right, why don't you guys both run us through a little roster review here? Maybe Hamza take the quarterbacks, Trevor running backs, Hamza wide receivers, and back to Trev for the tight ends.
Sure. So we got Jaden Daniels and Baker. I think the big one for us might end up being Baker here, just given the rest of the roster build. Looking at how many Tampa Bay players we actually have, I was kind of just I was starting to think, all right, what's that coaching staff looking like right now, and how much do we believe in like Zach Robinson as offensive coordinator and George Edwards as the passing game coordinator? And so it'll be interesting to see how that part of our build goes for sure. But I'm happy with getting Jaden Daniels. I think he is a top 3 quarterback in the league, and assuming he stays healthy, we should get some production out of him.
Yeah, and from the running back perspective, we got 2 studs up top, Walker and HN. We definitely have to hope that Walker is going to be in the lead role and that Kansas City cleans up their offensive line, because I think that there's definitely a situation where he ends up disappointing us a little bit this year. But the rest of the room, I think, considering how late we ended up waiting on the rest of our running backs, ended up being pretty good. We got Dowdle kind of in the middle rounds. We expect him to be getting in that 15 touch range. And if he's going to be scoring the touchdowns for Pittsburgh, that's going to end up being a very good pick. James Conner, obviously, while he's on the field, he has all of the ability to be a top 12 runner as long as he still is going to be the featured back. I know they signed Tyler Algier, so maybe that's a little bit of wish casting, but at 156, I think it's worth the shot. Emmanuel Wilson, I think he can get us off to a hot start. I do think that there's a situation where he ends up being our flex player the first month of the season. Alvin Kamara will need an injury, I think, to make any sort of impact, and same with Jalen Blue.
Receivers, I think the big one here, right, is we'll see how Brian Thomas Jr. kind of bounces back. I think we can believe in Ibuka and Devonta Smith's production, and they're going to be kind of focal points in this offense. I think where there's smoke in this case, we might want to expect AJ Brown is traded in that June timeframe, and so that'll only help Devonta Smith's case. I'm really in on DK here as well. I think I was just trying to look up some stats as well, and towards the back half of last season, I mean, he was a top 30 wide receiver, and so to get him that late, assuming the offense takes another step forward, potentially with a Jeremiah Love in tandem as well, maybe those explosive opportunities will only get bigger for DK.
And I guess I'll round out with the tight ends. with Ferg, I think if you remember in the middle of last season, he was like tied in 4-3, whatever. Like we know he's a good player. We know he scores touchdowns. We know that offense is elite. Obviously, with the addition of Pickens, it's like more of a crunch there too. But he's not someone that I have to worry about being taken out of the games or being replaced or not being on the field, et cetera, et cetera. Kincaid, didn't love that pick, but I guess there's people that are out there that are still believing in him, and that's why he was auto drafted where he was. And then with Kate Otten, again, just someone that I always enjoyed targeting late in these type of formats over the years, because for whatever reason, like we've seen him have to be the number one in that offense, and when he is forced to be that, he's actually pretty good and pretty solid and has a good rapport with Baker. So I would say this team overall, not my favorite team that we've built, but I do like the receivers a little bit more. And I think you hit the nail on the head with BTJ. If he can be a top 15 guy, like we know Sutton's going to score his touchdowns, Wandale's going to be the focal point. And I'm kind of liking this Christian Kirk value later. Now with the substation, I don't think his hamstring is going to survive, but you would know that better than I do as a Niners fan. But anyways, I would say I would give this draft a B-.
Yeah, and I want to add something on Kincaid. So I think his value is getting pushed up a lot because of his playoff run. He was very good for the Bills in the playoffs. And I feel like we've seen that from players in the past. And somebody that comes to mind immediately that I fell into, I always try and remind myself, don't get caught up with the playoffs. Don't get caught up with the playoffs. But I did on Xavier Worthy last year. He was awesome in their playoff run. And I was like so in on him. Rice was out. I thought he was going to get established in that offense and that they were going to be much better. And it just never came to fruition. He just was not that player that he was in the playoffs. So if you're drafting Dalton Kincaid, you're listening to us and saying, oh, look at how good he was in the playoffs. Like, try to ignore that as much as you can and look at the body of work. Look at how he played in the regular season. The NFL season is a grind week over week. And what you do in the playoffs is not always necessarily how it's going to translate going into next year, even if you do try and extrapolate 3 or 4 games or add the last 2 or 3 games of the regular season and then the playoffs. So I feel like Kincaid gets boosted up because of that. So just be a little bit on edge about that type of analysis if you see it. All right. And with that, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys for drafting. Hamza, thank you for being on. And we'll talk to you in the next one.